what I wanted to ask was, what's the connection between the Dajjal and this world here? Like the education system you say is corrupted. How does this information get transferred, and how do they know when to put into force? Do they work with the jinns, or how does that work?
You've asked one question, or two or three? What is the connection between Dajjal and the education system? Remember what he has on his forehead? Kafir. So, his objective is to take you to kufr. And he gives you an education system, an educational system, or a system of education, which is actually the system of kufr education. But he doesn't use the word kufr, he says the system of secular education. But the two words are synonymous. If you choose to be secular in your process of education, or to embrace secular politics or secular economics, the definition of secular is to take Allah, take the truth and put it outside the classroom. That is secular. Take the truth which has come from Allah and put it outside the classroom. And we must now pursue knowledge without any connection at all with the truth which has come from Allah. That is secular. So obviously, the secularized educational system would be devoted to only the left eye. The left eye. And this left eye is very bright, says the Prophet ﷺ. Brilliantly bright. In other words, this left eye will deliver the scientific and technological revolution which will dazzle mankind. Nobody will use horses anymore when they come with mechanized transport. No need for sails anymore, waiting for the wind. But now we have the steam engine. And the discovery was steam was in an island called Britain. You know Britain? Yes, steam. The steam engine started here. Okay? And then the combustion engine. Yeah? The scientific and technological revolution started here in Britain. The industrial revolution started here in Britain. The feminist revolution started here in Britain. That's why I have said, if you were born in Britain, even if your parents had come from Pakistan and you were born in Britain, you have an advantage over those in Pakistan and in Egypt and in Algeria. Why don't you use the advantage that you have? Even if you had a Darul Uloom education, never mind. The Darul Uloom does do some good. For example, you can memorize the Quran in the Darul Uloom. That's beneficial. But having said that, you must be able to now use your experience, your rich experience of having gone to university in Britain, having studied the British history, having studied the Industrial Revolution. If you are living in Britain and you know nothing about the Industrial Revolution, my gosh, buy a one-way ticket to the moon. You're living in the Britain and you've not studied the scientific and technological revolution which started here. What are you doing in Britain? Instead, you pick up your boxing gloves and you're engaging in this boxing match. They were Bandi Barel people. Leave them, leave them, leave them. They're not going anywhere. They're not going anywhere with that boxing match, but you're going to go somewhere. You're going to go somewhere. If you will now follow this methodology, that one leads to kufr. The reason why I was so active in the classroom was because I came into their classroom in their best universities with the Quran in my heart. That was what made the difference, okay? So the educational system here is meant to produce people who have knowledge from only one eye, external knowledge, and who are internally blind. We can go beyond this. We can talk about the political system. We could talk about how the Khilafat movement in India was struggling to be faithful to the truth. And the All India Muslim League had only a passing acquaintance with the truth. And it was such a tragedy that it was the All India Muslim League which brought Pakistan into being rather than the Khilafat movement. It was a tragedy that Mohandas Karamchand Gandhi was assassinated by the same people who are now ruling India. Because if he had lived and if the Khilafat movement had survived, the British would not have succeeded in doing what they did. Okay? If we go with the Quran to the world of economics and to monetary economics, you could advise the government of Pakistan, as I did yesterday perhaps, when you have debts, as so many parts of the world now have debts that you cannot repay, you have a PhD in stupidity to keep on paying the interest, borrowing money to pay the interest. I mean, you have a PhD in stupidity. What do you do when you have debts that you cannot possibly repay? You can't apply for bankruptcy because Trump would not agree. What you do is a unilateral renunciation of obligation to pay the interest. Meaning, we're not going to pay any interest anymore. We're deciding this, not you. Do what you want. We're not going to pay any more interest. Why? The moral law is the highest law, and this is oppression. Number two, Allah says in the Quran that when the moneylender forgoes the interest, he is entitled to the return of the principal sum. فَلَكُمْ رُؤُوسُ أَمْوَالِكُمْ. That's in the Quran. So we accept that we have to repay you the capital sum borrowed. But we will repay you on the basis of our capacity to repay. And the more you attack us, the less our capacity to repay. Why? Because human rights supersede economic rights. Our people need food. Our people are enslaved. This is the strategy. They won't listen to me now. 20 years from now, they'll remember what I'm saying, if they follow the foolish policies that they're following now. Oxford education does not provide you with this kind of guidance. You have to have a backup currency, because from the time you refuse to pay the interest, they'll attack the rupee, and your rupee will be tomorrow like the Venezuelan bolivar and the Zimbabwe dollar. It'll be runaway inflation. So what's the backup? The answer? Gold dinar and silver dirham must become legal tender. And you cannot strike the gold dinar and silver dirham with inflation. Next question.
Is the Dajjal imprisoned on earth?
Is the Dajjal imprisoned on earth? No, he's not.
And how will he be defeated?
How many questions are you going to ask? So, only one at a time, my son. Yeah. You've already asked one question. Give a chance to others now, okay? One question at a time. We come back to you, yeah.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala al-mursaleen. I just want to say that when Allah is talking in the Quran and you hear that Isa alayhi salam mentions Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam as Ahmad. Now, you have to think, why does that happen? If something like that happens, there's a big change in your name for a person that's very important to the end times. And the one who's doing it is an ayah for the end times. His name is Jesus. Why do we know that? Because Allah, when they tried to sacrifice Jesus, Allah said, what should be halal? So that's where we can find the mutashabihat in it. So why would he call Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam Ahmad? Because that's a name that's made from his heart, from his love. We cannot change someone's name to something more, how do you say it, more beautiful and more kind. If you don't love that person, if you don't have love in your heart. For example, when we look at Dajjal, and we say, is Dajjal on the earth? People say no, but I can see him all around me. While the Sheikh is talking about this lecture, the only thing I mentioned here that people are playing with smartphones and keeping their child busy with the smartphones and doing stuff that is actually not meant to be how we used to sit and listen to the Sheikh. That's where knowledge escapes you. When you want knowledge, you have to open your heart and listen with the wisdom of the Lord. And let them talk and speak through you and use your tongue. When that happens, you will shake the earth. And don't be scared to speak the truth. And don't just mention stuff what you don't know what you're talking about. When you copy about something and you are asking a question, it must not be personal. You must be knowing where you're talking about because this is knowledge. Not to go home and think, oh, well, I have this problem, so I'm going to ask that. No, that's when you do it in your private time. You take care of yourself, and when you are here for the whole Ummah, you have to talk for the whole Ummah. That's all.
Well, I am astonished. I'm astonished, really, to learn that while I was lecturing, some of you were busy with your smartphones. It's very sad for me. Yes. Okay. I was not like that when I was a student, not at all. If my teacher is teaching, I have to pay undivided attention to him while he is teaching, which is why I'm sitting today teaching. So you have to be careful in an assembly of knowledge to show respect for knowledge. Yeah.
So there's a question
Thank you.
online, which is, what are your thoughts on Imran Khan, and do you think a new house of knowledge can be built in Pakistan?
I believe that the new Prime Minister of Pakistan is an honest man. He's not a thief like those who preceded him. Yes. I don't think also that he can be bought with US dollars and with a house in Hollywood and with his son attending an American university and so on, or with a beautiful American woman. No, I believe that this man will put Pakistan first, which is why his life is in danger. Yeah, the same way that they killed General Zia-ul-Haq, they would try to kill him as well. And that's why he is someone who is bona fide. But having said that, and having paid tribute to his sincerity and his dedication, I don't think he will betray Pakistan, no. There is no substitute for the Quran. When I look around, the men and women around him, I don't see anyone capable of advising him from the Quran, and he most certainly does not have the knowledge of the Quran. And so I don't see how it's possible to get out of the hole you are in with anything else but the Quran. So I continue from a distance to send messages to him, hopefully that he might use his internet to check out and listen to the lectures and get some knowledge. And I know I can't do it in Pakistan. They destroy me. If here, they're shutting the doors of the masjid to me. Can you imagine what they do to me in Pakistan?
So just a gentle reminder to keep the questions one at a time and short as well.
Yes, one at a time.
Sheikh,
I know you want me to go to Pakistan, I know that.
well, I do believe everybody is doing their bit abroad as well, and until what I was wanting to say is that your work on monetary system, your explanation of how money should have inherent value is, for me, is far more important. Even though I'm not, the end time thing, I think that because that's a very current issue, we are all in this. I call it slavery. Basically, they left us appearing to be independent, but actually, so that we don't fight them, but actually enslaved us with this monetary system.
And banking system, which is the fractional reserve and all that you very nicely explained. It's not only Muslims, but I think look at China and Russia. They're all reserving gold now. They're all listening to you as well. It's not No. The Russians and the Chinese are far advanced in thinking, and our people are still eating biryani and going to masjid.
When you Russia, but I think people are listening. Not going to Pakistan is we have liquid date. We are starting again to. There is lots of minerals. We have to come out of the debt trap and have this inherent value currency somehow. So I think I would really, kudos to you. You really did a wonderful work on this and open our eyes to the slavery that we are in actually. So I think that's just a comment, not a question.
I'll continue, inshallah, working. I'm 80 years of age now, by the moon and not by the sun. I'll continue, inshallah.
Okay, so I apologise for using my phone. I was actually recording you on little clips, both using our clips for press segments.
I'm not understanding the accent.
Speaking English, I apologize for using his phone.
Oh, you were?
Yes, okay. The question I want to ask, obviously yesterday you made a statement that we should all migrate to Pakistan. Some of our second, third, fourth, fifth, probably generations here. It's going to be pretty hard to uphold your families and go back. We're getting, our Muslim brothers and sisters are becoming prominent leaders in this country, our politicians, and moving up in the ranks. What if more of our Muslim brothers and sisters became prominent leaders in this country, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give them more diet towards Islam, and this became a more force of Islam in this country, then what would you say to that? How would we expand our Islam further in this country with that sort of?
How does Islam progress in this country? How do we raise the profile of Islam in this country? Is that the question? Yeah. You cannot raise the profile of Islam by betraying the truth. You cannot deliver a version of Islam that is a cosmetic version, that would appeal to the sensitivities of the British people. A cosmetic version of Islam, a sanitized version of Islam, that they could sit down for having and breakfast with that kind of Islam. That kind of Islam, they'll invite you to the White House for the Eid dinner. Yeah. The only Islam that you can seek to raise the profile in this country is that Islam which has zero tolerance for oppression. And that is the same for authentic Judaism and authentic Christianity, and I remind the Hindu, authentic Hinduism as well. Zero tolerance for oppression. How can I be an advisor to them, without calling any names, to advise them on human rights, when they are the greatest oppressors that mankind has ever witnessed in human history? Instead of advising them, I must do what Imam al-Khomeini did, rahimahullah, and point to them in their face and say, this is Shaitan al-Kabir. Now that is a courageous man. To point your finger straight in the face of the oppressor and declare to him, you are an oppressor, that is the sunnah of Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. This ummah has been given a mission to perform. And these schoolboys who take tickets to go and visit Israel and betray the truth have to be told that this ummah has a mission to perform, in Britain as well as elsewhere. And that mission is Amar bil Ma'ruf wa Nahi anil Munkar. That if it is the truth, if it is right, stand up for it, regardless of the price you have to pay. And if it is wrong, if it is unjust, if it's a mountain of a lie, if it is oppression, stand up against it, regardless of the price you have to pay. That is the Islam that we want to see in this country. But do you think those who are the management committees of all your masajid in this country today, do you think they have even 2 peanuts worth of consideration for the ummah and the mission of the ummah? And those imams who have to sing for their supper, you think they have the courage to stand up for the truth? No. So you have to look elsewhere than the masjid. You have to look elsewhere for those who raise the profile of Islam in this country courageously, but yet, in the way of Malcolm X, eloquently. Courageously, but so eloquently. That was Malcolm.
Okay, so we've got 1, 2, and 3. Okay.
With a shorter one. Your Eminence, once again, assalamu alaikum. As a kite flyer from Lahore, I'm going to keep the threads, the black and white ones, pretty secure under my pillow. I agree, and to be honest, I'm one of the guys on the mobile phone, right? I agree with the need for a realigned house of knowledge, recognizing the spectrum of knowledge emanating from our centers of learning are not producing thinkers, right, and are deficient in discourse, hence advising governments is a far-fetched idea in that regard. What is the inert root cause of the compartmentalization of our senses of learning that has resulted in the systematic destruction of our houses of knowledge? What deficiencies, the question is, what deficiencies or weakness on our part has invited this nefarious destruction?
That's a good question. And I wish I knew the answer. Somebody could probably do the research, but I think Iqbal had his finger on the button when Iqbal said that this ummah stopped thinking 500 years ago, because the problem that we now face was already there with him. Or if Iqbal had been the product of a Darul Uloom, he'd never been an Iqbal. Okay? My teacher of blessed memory, Maulana Dr. Muhammad Fadlur Rahman Ansari, he did not go to a Darul Uloom. No. And I am not the product of a traditional Darul Uloom. No. Somewhere along the line in history, somebody took us for a ride, because our institutions of Islamic learning were producing those who were extending the frontiers of knowledge. in so many different disciplines in our golden age. And so someone came along and took us for a ride and dismantled the house of learning and replaced it with this clumsy replacement. I don't know who did it. It could have been Dajjal. I don't know who did it. But I'm not too interested in finding out who did it or when it happened. I'm more interested in recognizing today that I cannot change that model. I'm not going to waste my time trying to change that model. But I am not ill-speaking them. I'm saying that they are sincere and they are dedicated people amongst them. And they do a good job when they train people to become hafiz of the Quran and so on. But that house of knowledge is not delivering the thinkers that we need if we are to one day once again reclaim leadership in the world of knowledge. We have to build a new house of knowledge. And I'm saying to you that this is where we start, with the Quran. 2 nights from now in Leicester, please come to Leicester. We will deal with the Quran and the moon. Methodology for the recitation of the Quran. Please bring your children. And in Leicester, I may be able to do what I could not do tonight. I took only 2 stars tonight. One in Surah to Sad and the other in Surah to Sabah, and connected them for you. But in Leicester, I hope I get a chance to do more than that. To connect about 10 or 15 different stars for you. That's going to be a lovely pattern on the Christian in the Quran.
Okay, so there's one online and then I'm going to go straight to you. So as a student of philosophy, I often come across the problem of physical and metaphysical.
The problem of?
Physical and metaphysical.
Physical and metaphysical, yeah?
I find a constant conflict between science and religion. Religion must stand in judgment of a reason, yet many are using the rationality of science to disprove religion. How can we as Muslims find the balance and the right methodology to bring harmony to both scientific, worldly and religious spiritual knowledge?
The scientific method, if I am incorrect, kindly correct me. The scientific method is that scientific knowledge is derived from external observation and experimentation and rational inquiry. If I'm incorrect, kindly correct me. But when the scientific method goes beyond that, to say that this is the only valid knowledge, and if knowledge is not derived this way, it does not qualify as knowledge, we challenge that. And Dr. Muhammad Iqbal did precisely that. He challenged this arrogant declaration in the first 2 chapters of his book, The Reconstruction of Religious Thought in Islam. So I advise you to read these 2 chapters, but pass by the pharmacy and buy a bottle of Tylenol tablets first. Because Iqbal is not easy. Iqbal is not easy. I was a master's degree student in philosophy, and I read those 2 chapters, I don't know, 20 times. And I never understood him until I studied Surah Al-Kahf of the Quran. Only then I was able to understand those 2 chapters of Iqbal's book. Yeah. You already had a question. No, he's in charge, not me. He's in charge, not me.
Assalamu alaikum. My question stems from yesterday's lecture, where you advised that we should get ready to move. My issue with this is that by 2030, the UN agenda is that every school across the whole world will be teaching a form of LGBT and a lot of other rubbish. So we move to another country. By 2030, every school in the world will be teaching that our children will be forced to go to schools because homeschooling will eventually stop. So where do we go to?
Okay.
Keeping in mind that we're living in an ever secularized world, and the governments and regimes across the world are becoming more and more secularized, including the Muslim countries.
Okay. The answer to your question from the Quran, is that there are two forces in the world which will resist them in the process of globalization of a godless society, the globalization of a decadent society, the globalization of oppressor who oppresses the rest of the world. There are two forces in the world which will resist them. One is the Ummah of Nabi Isa alayhi salam, that is the Christian world. But I didn't have the time today to take you to the Quran, which separates the Christian world into two. One part which is Monkey Town, and the other part which will resist them. That part which is resisting them has already declared, Russia has already declared, never in 1,000 years, not in Russia. A man can never marry another man in Russia and get a marriage certificate, never in 1,000 years. So Russia and the Orthodox Christian world will not bend their knees to these oppressors. And there is a part of the world of Islam which will not take tickets to go fly to Israel and make friendship with Israel on behalf of the British government. There is a part of the world of Islam which will remain faithful to the truth and will not bend its knee. And there are in this country, yes, alhamdulillah, young people in this country who are not fools and not traitors and will not bend their knee. If you have to make hijrah, you make hijrah. But Allah's earth is wide. And there will always be a part of Allah's earth where the believer can survive without betraying Allah. Let me quote to you from Surah to Ali Imran, because I should not be talking out of my hat, I should give you the proof from the Quran. The angels are taking people to Jahannam, and they pause to ask them, Fima kuntum? Tell us what happened that you landed in this mess, you're heading for Jahannam. And they reply and they say, Kunna mustada'afina fil ard. We had no choice. We had no choice. We were helpless. To which the angels reply, Alam takun ardullahi wasi'ah fatuhajiru fiha. Was Allah's earth not wide, that you could have searched for some part of Allah's earth where you would not betray Him? So from this verse of the Quran we know that there will always be that part of Allah's earth where a believer can survive.
Last question.
Last question, okay. You're lucky to get the last question.
No, just a quick question, Sheikh. If you can answer it, just based on the brother here, the question he asked about the Muslims gaining rank in this country in the government, does that allow us to participate in the voting system? Because some ulama say that we can vote to basically the Damien statement that to participate in the lesser evil to avoid the greater evil. Can you just clarify that? Exactly.
Can you give me 1 more hour? We are being tested in Akhirul Zaman. This is the age of test and trials. And those who have eyes and yet cannot see are going down the river of no return into the hellfire. This is the price you pay for being blind in this world. If the Khilaf, if the Khilafat movement had not been destroyed, when Mustafa Kemal pulled the rug from under it by abolishing the Khilafah, and I feel so sad to say, if Dr. Iqbal had not played the role that he played, if the Khilafat movement had survived, we would have another political model in post-British India. And if Gandhi had not been assassinated, the Hindus would have had another political model than the Republic of India. The Muslims wanted a political system in which they could live as Muslims. The Hindus wanted a political system in which they could live as Hindus. And these two communities would have searched for a modus vivendi, a means by which they could live together harmoniously. But the British did not want that. They wanted you to be sucked into and embraced by their political system, which was built on shirk. If the Darul Uloom was playing the role it was supposed to play, it would have already analyzed the political system which has come from modern Western civilization and declared it to be kufr, written on his forehead. But the Darul Uloom is not playing that role. It's not just in politics, it's in economics as well. It's in the monetary system as well. It's in the educational system. It's kufr everywhere. And we have proven ourselves to be totally inadequate in even understanding the challenges of this age, much less responding to it. Those who go and vote in the elections of the modern secular state, on Judgment Day you'll be informed that you have validated that political system by going and voting in the system. You have validated it, and it is built on shirk. Those who refrain from voting, like I have refrained from voting, are saved from the shirk. But if you insist you want to go and vote, I have not been appointed to stopping you. Go and vote, by all means. But on Judgment Day, don't cry, don't come to me. Yeah, you stand up on your own legs and defend yourself before Allah. If you don't know the subject and you're acting on the basis of your own ignorance, then you're a fool. You're a fool. Because Allah gave you the Quran as guidance and you never bothered to go to the Quran. So here am I in Britain, I'm here to teach you to think. And here to invite you to return to the Quran to understand politics, to understand economics, to understand the market, to understand what is money. This is the work I'm doing.